Hey everyone, and welcome to my 2018 Albums of the Year list. Just firstly to clear up a couple things, so on this YouTube channel, obviously I haven't really talked about music previously, but it's like my favourite medium and form of art, so I figured I might as well start doing album reviews. I've done them in the past on a previous channel, but I just didn't think I'd be bothering to do them on this channel for a multitude of reasons, but I guess recently I've just kind of missed being part of the active conversation in the community, so I figured, fuck it, why not? 2018's over. My albums of the year list is very much written because I've posted it in multiple places. So why not just record up a video and join the conversation again? It seems like a good place to start. I can start doing reviews into 2019. It'll be a nice thing to do, So secondly, what I want to do is I just want to explain the format of the list. Basically, there's a guy on YouTube I watch called YMS. He does film reviews. He's a really knowledgeable and funny guy, so if you guys haven't heard of him, I'd highly recommend you check him out. Just go look up whatever film you're interested in, get his take on it. I'm sure it'll be entertaining. But basically, when it comes around to like end of year list time for him, he will basically recommend every film that he considers worthy of recommendation. He never puts like an arbitrary number on his list. Like he doesn't say, I'm going to do top 50 films, top 100 films. He'll just, anything that he would recommend, he will chuck on his list, however long or short that may be. And I really like that idea. So here, I'm basically going to list off everything from the year that I consider to be a 6 out of 10 album or better. Plus, I'll chuck in a couple of honourable mentions at the start, and I'll explain my reasoning as to why I've done that. So without further ado, let's just get into the list. Or, like I mentioned anyway, the 3 honourable mentions that I want to talk about just a little bit before. So firstly, the first thing I want to mention is the album Dose Your Dreams by the band Fucked Up. So I totally understand why people love this record. It's an incredibly long, ambitious, from an instrumental and a lyrical point of view. It's probably one of the most cohesive works that Fucked Up have made as well, which is saying a lot, because I mean, all their records are kind of ambitious and cohesive in its own right. So this is, it's not a band that are new to this kind of thing and they're just attempting this really insane record for the first time. They've done this before, and I mean the experience shows as well, to be fair. I do think this is probably their best longer piece of work, but sadly just for me, I didn't find it as enthralling as a lot of other people. I certainly found a lot of it to feel kind of monotonous and one note, even though there was a lot of variation in terms of like the genres and sounds they played with. But again, just sadly wasn't really for me. However, like I said, if you're into the idea of a super ambitious, super long, narratively interesting hardcore punk record or punk rock record, definitely give this one a shot. The next record I want to give a quick shout out to is On Dark Horses by Emma Ruth Rundle. This one hurts a lot. I really wanted to like this because I fucking adored Marked for Death, and I love Emma as a musician. I've seen her live and she's fantastic. But I just feel like this record was way too, washed out with reverb. It was a little bit too dreamy for my liking, and I didn't think the songwriting was as strong as Marked for Death. But I will say I'm very much in the minority on this, so anybody who, thinks this sounds interesting to them, the idea of, a singer-songwriter type thing with very, dream pop, very, washed-out, reverby aesthetic with lyrically heavy subjects, yeah, there's definitely a record that's kind of, heavy, but not in a typical, metal or rock sense. It's just a very kind of all-encompassing, atmospheric album. Again, I can totally understand the appeal. I can understand why people like this. But again, sadly for me, it was just a little bit too far in the fuzzy dream pop direction. And finally, I just want to give the last honourable mention to Bark Your Head Off Dog by Hopalong. I really love this band. Their first record's fucking amazing. The second record is also very, very strong. This one was just a little bit too quiet for me. I like it when they're being raw and emotional and in the moment. They're an indie folk band or a fuzz folk band, or I guess a folk rock band to an extent. And their first 2 records were certainly a bit more raw, rough around the edges, as feedback shimmering through the amps and whatnot. And I really liked all of that. I thought it gave it a very personable quality. This record I found to just be a teeny bit too clean, teeny bit too quiet. The songwriting's still solid, lyrically it's still pretty great. But again, it just, for me, didn't really stick in my mind at all. I listened to it a fair few times on release, but then as the year went on, it just kind of drifted further and further into the background. But still, if you want some really sweet, soft, heartfelt indie folk, you can't really go wrong here. And again, this is a record that a lot of other people enjoy more than me. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely don't pass this one up. Okay, so now onto the list. At 34, we have the record Saturn by Now, spelled Nao. They are an alternative R&B and neo-soul group. I think it might be one person, I honestly have no idea. It's solid as fuck. It's a well-produced, smooth, catchy neo-soul and R&B record. If you heard the debut, this isn't really a huge departure from that sound, and I don't think this has got the most unique sound in the style for sure, but it's still just a catchy, fun listen, so definitely give it a shot if it sounds like your thing. At 33, we have the digital hardcore record, The Ugly Art by Machine Gull. If you ever wanted to know what The Prodigy would sound like during a bad trip with a bunch of organic and kind of like distorted instruments thrown in the mix, give this a shot. That's pretty much what it is. It's a little long, it's pretty fucking intense, but if you're up for that kind of thing, then definitely give this a shot, because it is a bit of a unique experience, I feel, and also, again, a lot of people have enjoyed this one a lot more than I have. At number 32, we have the record Beyondless by the band Ice Age. They're a post-punk band. It kind of hurts to put this one as low as this. I'll certainly expect it to be a lot higher, especially with the singles that they dropped, because I thought basically all of the singles off this record are really fucking strong. They have a great track record. All their 3 previous albums are amazing. If you haven't heard them, I'd definitely recommend them. And their highs on here are so good and very much comparable to a lot of those records, but just unfortunately, I felt like they reined in the sound a teeny bit too much, and I didn't find it as raw, as like captivating through the sheer energy of the performances as the previous records. Having said that though, Hurrah, Catch It, The Day Music Dies, and Painkiller are probably all going to be on rotation forever for me, and the rest of the record, again, it's not bad, I just didn't find it as kind of enthralling as their previous material. At number 31, we have the metalcore album Posthuman by Harm's Way. Now, here's where you start to see Code Orange's influence, I guess, in the world of metalcore. For sure, this is my favourite Harm's Way record. I think the kind of mid-tempo crushing riffs that they generally have were a lot more interesting here because of the industrial influences they had that kind of like helped it along, helped it just feel a bit kind of fuller, a bit more defined and that kind of thing. I didn't feel like this was a truly incredible record or anything like that, but it was definitely better than a lot of the other things that tried this thing in the year. For example, the Jesus Piece record that dropped this year, I didn't think was as good as this, and it was very similar, but the riffs on here just win out in terms of catchiness, in terms of how crushing they are, and I think the industrial sounds were more kind of well blended in this record than in the Jesus Piece record, for example. At number 30, we have the electropop record, The Now Now by Gorillaz. So, I love Gorillaz, and after Humans came out, I certainly wanted something that was a little bit more consistent, because that record was all over the place in terms of quality, style, just everything. It was a real, like, mess of an album. I didn't hate it at all. In fact, I actually thought it was, like, a decent record. But this record definitely was a lot more consistent than that. They kind of stripped the sound back to just what Gorillaz sound like. They had far less guests on this album, and that was certainly refreshing as a Gorillaz fan. I would say, unfortunately, I felt like this album suffered from being a bit monotone as a result, and the kind of... it was consistently, like, 6 out of 10, whereas Humans spiked up to, like, 8 out of 10 tracks, and then dipped down to, like, 3 out of 10 tracks, for example. So, overall, I kind of liked this about as much, maybe a teensy bit more. But still, you know, I'm glad to have Gorillaz back doing something that actually sounds like them. Next up at number 29, we have Iridescence by Brockhampton. It's not as good as the Saturation series, sure, but it's still a good record. That's basically all I have to say about it. It's a bit more spotty, maybe. For me, personally, I thought the ballads were less good here than they were on the Saturation series, but the bangers and the production on the bangers is really interesting and pretty unique as far as I'm concerned. There's still a ton of personality and character that comes through. So, you know, if you want a kind of whacked out, slightly all over the place, but cohesive rap album, then this is kind of where you want to be this year, for sure. Next up is Janelle Monáe with Dirty Computer at number 28, an R&B and pop record. Now, at this point, we start getting into the records that I really did play a ton this year. This is a gorgeously produced, smooth as fuck, poppy R&B record. I definitely enjoyed this more on my first couple of listens after versus letting it sit for a while, because I feel like a lot of the enjoyment of this record is kind of surface level, but it still doesn't stop it from being one of the better listens this year. Again, it's very organically produced as well, which is something I like hearing. It gives it kind of a vintage vibe, which is nice. So if that's the kind of thing you look for in your pop and R&B, definitely give this a shot. At number 27, we have Honey by Robyn. It's another electropop record. I actually hadn't heard of Robyn, but apparently this is the first record in 8 years, so it's something to be celebrated, I guess. it's just a well-produced, well-performed record. I don't really know what else to say. It's got catchy electropop songs that sound like they're, again, from a slightly more vintage age. Again, I would say, like, overall, there's nothing super groundbreaking here or anything like that. It's just a solid, decent, enjoyable record. At number 26, we have Errozone by Vane, who are a metalcore-mathcore outfit. Now, Vane are the future of hardcore as far as I'm concerned. This band have had just so many great ideas with some solid writing and very young, visceral energy across this record and also the EP before it, that you can't... It's, like, hard not to be excited about these guys, especially if you've seen, like, some of the live shows as well. Like, they look insane live. I'm very excited to see them actually relatively soon. Also, the other thing is this band very much feel like they're in a fetal stage of what they're doing. So to hear people kind of shit on this record comparing it to like stuff like Jane Doe and just classics from the genre, like any Dillinger record or whatever, is a little ridiculous. Like, come on guys, they haven't been around for that long. They're still a young band. They've got a chance to like grow and experiment. And again, this record shows a ton of promise. I think there's a lot of really interesting spots, a lot of interesting blending of the genres. For me, personally, I feel like this is perhaps a tiny bit too cheesy as far as metalcore goes. Like, it's got a lot of kind of, like, big, chunky new metal riffs that I'm maybe less into. I also didn't enjoy them that much on records like Forever by Code Orange, which, you know, gained a lot of critical praise and commercial praise. But, yeah, basically, I think once the kinks are ironed out, Vane are going to be an absolute force to be reckoned with. I would argue they're kind of already there. It's just a couple things they need to work on. Also, quickly... If you haven't listened to the EP before this, the split with Gift from God, it might go by a different name now, I'm not too sure. But regardless, like, if you haven't heard that, get on it. That is 5 minutes of some of the most intense mathcore, metalcore you will hear maybe over the last, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. It's very interesting. And again, despite the fact this record was perhaps less interesting than that EP, it still makes me very excited to see what this band do moving forwards. At number 25, we have the experimental electronic, I don't even know how to describe this guy, I guess like ambient pop record Age of by Oneohtrix Point Never. It kind of saddens me that this record was overlooked this year. Sure, it's not one of the best of the year, it's not one of his best records either, and it definitely has some lows, but I don't know, man, who else is making soundscapes like this? And they're certainly still quite mature, and there's still a depth of sound on this record. This dude is just like a treasure as an artist. Some of these songs are like pin drop quiet and they're still so catchy and instant that it's just kind of like really mindfucky and interesting. There's poppy electronic soundscapes all over this record, and quite frankly, if you don't enjoy the song Black Snow, we can't be friends. Sorry. At number 24, we have Challenger by Haggard Cat. These guys are I guess just like a pretty standard rock band with like some blues influence. For example, like if you like Queens of the Stone Age, if you like blues, if you like big chunky guitar riffs, then this is pretty much the album for you. There's driving riffs, tight performances, and really catchy core songwriting. Like, so you can't really go wrong, honestly. If you're into guitar music, you're into rock, definitely give it a shot. It's just a fuzzed out record with a ton of riffs on it and, you know, spades of swagger and groove to go. Next up at number 23 is Old Sweatshirt's Some Rap Songs. It's an experimental hip-hop record or a glitch-hop record, and I think my friend put this pretty aptly. This is kind of like Mad Villainy, only replacing all of the, like, super villain, you know, like, fun and games shit with just sheer, like, crushing sadness. This is kind of like just a shattered mind state in the form of a hip-hop record. It's only 22 minutes, is pretty unique, and I could totally see this one climbing up my rankings, as we go further on into 2019, because this was released pretty late in the year and it's very dense. I will say I can't personally justify putting it any higher right now because I do find it just a teensy bit too unfocused, but I will also say that's like very much by design, so if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check this record out. At number 22 we have Villagers, The Art of Pretending to Swim. It's an indie folk record, super standard to be honest. There's nothing really too interesting happening here. It's not too clean, it's not too sonory, but it hits you with a ton of great grooves, smooth vocal lines, and just, yeah, catchy songwriting. There's nothing really to report here. It's a pretty standard indie folk record. I just liked it a lot. Don't know what else to say. Next, at 21, we have Snail's House. I have no idea how to pronounce this, but it's like L''ETE, Let, I guess. It's a down-tempo record. I haven't really seen it spoken about too many places, which is a shame because this would do really fucking well amongst video game OST fans, I think. It's just a chilled out electronic record with touches of hip hop, touches of trip hop rather. It's detailed, well produced, reasonably varied for what it is. I kind of wish, again, like the Villagers record, I had more to say about this, but I don't. I think it's just worth people's time because it's not unique, it's not super flashy. It's just really solid, honestly. Having said that, though, speaking of uniqueness and flashiness, at number 20 we have Clarence Clarity, Think Peace. I guess I would describe this as like glitch pop and alternate R&B. I haven't really heard anyone who sounds like Clarence Clarity, especially not on his previous record. This one is a bit more, I guess, just standard poppy, but at the same time, I just feel like he's such a unique voice in music. This blend of, like, smooth as fuck pop, soulful silling, and these oddly soured melodies come together really effortlessly and cohesively to create a project that feels a lot more mature and a lot more focused than his debut album. But I will say I still prefer the debut, and if you haven't heard it, then Jesus Christ, go listen to it. That is a bit of a mindfuck of a record. It's a great time. I would describe it as almost like the Converge of pop. It's like Converge are a very densely, hard to pick apart hardcore band. This is very dense, hard to pick apart pop. Again, slightly less here versus his debut, but I still think this is a record worth talking about. I still think there are some of the best tracks of the, year on this album. So definitely give it a shot if you haven't heard it. So one thing I forgot to say, actually, that I intended to kind of like put at the start. I could just edit in, but I mean, I'm just kind of lazy, so fuck it. It's going here, okay? This year was a really good year for rock, I thought. Overall, it was a pretty average year in general. I felt like every other genre was kind of like maybe a little bit subpar, but rock just had one of the best years it's had in a long time as far as I'm concerned. And while we're, kind of along those lines, the next record that I'm going to talk about is Infernal Coil, Within a Forgotten World at number 19. This is a absolutely just filthy, blood-caked death metal record. The production is so lo-fi and fuzzy, this almost feels like a more atmospheric record than just like a straight riff bonanza. The songs are very well written and have a huge variety in approach. For example, you have like one song that's 2 minutes long and is just incredibly intense, and another more expansive, more kind of like interesting 9-minute song. Actually, to say this record isn't just a straight riff bonanza is a little unfair, because when a clearer riff does just cut through the mix, it's always a really killer riff and a great moment on the record, and it contrasts really nicely with the super dense, just walls of noise. This is a really good debut. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. And number 18, certainly not a debut, in fact, far from it. We have the veterans at this point, really. Ghost with Prequel. It's just a straight heavy metal record. Some people like Ghost, some people don't. I understand why people like and hate Ghost, and this record specifically, because it's kind of oddly positioned in their career. I didn't think I'd enjoy this so much. I don't typically enjoy the more theatrical and over-the-top heavy metal records, but damn, man, Ghost have been at it for a while. They're just really good at writing songs. They know how to write a catchy tune. The playing's tight, the production's great, the imagery is fun. I would almost describe it as like Disney's take on heavy metal, only far better than you would imagine that to be. Next up, though, we have a record that I am very excited to talk about, purely because I don't think many people are talking about it, which I think is unfortunate. At number 17, we have Dull Meat by Mouthbreather. This is a metalcore or mathcore record, kind of along the same lines as like your Code Oranges, your Veins, your Harm's Ways, although I guess a lot faster than Harm's Way. Harm's Way would be like the sludge band, this band's, grindcore, I suppose. But, I guess my tagline, if I had to sell this record to someone, I would just say, like, have you ever wanted to hear a guitar scream in pain? Denim Jacket at 1 minute and 7 seconds. That is what it sounds like. This is one of the harshest metalcore records you'll hear this year. If that doesn't sell you on it, quite frankly, this album isn't for you. It's short. It's like 10 minutes. It's really, really short. And it's just such a punishing 10-minute listen. There's so many fucking riffs on this record. So many really wild, like, freakish sounds coming through the... Like, you'll have, like, feedback through a whammy pedal to just produce this ear-shattering sound that's kind of used in the middle of a breakdown or when there's, like, a section of silence or whatever. It just works really, really well. I will say that I much prefer the EP to this, but that's kind of an unfair comparison because the EP they released before this might be my favourite piece of metalcore put to tape over 5 minutes. Like, you can't fuck with it. That EP was utterly disgusting. This was a tiny bit cleaner than that, and I think the rawness of the EP gave it such an interesting quality, and there were so many ideas on that EP that, you know, this is kind of just like the same thing but more fleshed out, so I guess it's always going to be a little more underwhelming. Still, though, if you want something utterly punishing and that won't take all of your time, Mouth Breather Dull Meat. At number 16, we have Avery by Julia Holter, a chamber pop, art pop, kind of experimental pop record. It's just a lush, really interesting headfuck of a record. It's long, it's super soundscapey, it's filled with just instrumental variety that nothing will even come close to challenging that you're in 2018. Like, there's just so many instruments used across this whole thing, they're all captured beautifully. And I will say this would be a lot higher if this was just ever so slightly reined in, I think. She got a little crazy with how expansive some of the songs are, and it felt it kind of caused it to feel a bit just directionless at points. I will say this is totally one of those records, though, that, like, if someone comes up to me and says, this is my album of the year, I'll just go, fair enough, cool, yep, I respect that. Like, you know, that's a totally fair pick. I can totally understand why. So, you know, if you want something that's a bit of a unique, interesting, very lush pop record, I mean, pop's a really, really kind of a weird term for this, but I guess it kind of is, like chamber pop, I guess, or Baroque pop, then definitely give this a shot. At number 15, we have another heavy metal record, which surprised me, actually. I'm not the biggest fan of older metal, but Judas Priest's Firepower has too many riffs to ignore. I've never really been a fan of older metal, or older music in general. To be honest, I'm kind of like very much a millennial. I'm like, if it's not released in the 2000s onwards, there's a lower chance I'm going to enjoy it. Not for any specific reason, or like, you know, I guess it's just like a weird bias I have. It's not something I do intentionally or whatever, but just so you guys are aware, that's kind of just a bias I hold. But this record is kind of like what started to change my perception on that. This year I've kind of like enjoyed a lot of Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, that kind of thing as well. So this is kind of what sparked it all, and I can totally understand why these guys are like one of the longest running metal bands ever, and one of the most celebrated as well. You can just totally see this is just such a like experienced record. It's such a well-crafted album. From every riff, from every like soaring melody, from every like harmonized vocal, all of it is just done to such a degree of kind of experience that it is kind of hard to argue with it, man. I mean, I guess it's a bit long, but the vocals are fucking killer all over this record. The riffs are on point and the tunes are there. What more can you ask for from just a standard, you know, heavy metal record, really? Next up, though, we have the total opposite end of the heavy music spectrum, the super non-standard Rollo Tomassi with Time Will Die and Love Will Bury It. I've tagged this as like mathcore and post-rock. They are really a mathcore band, but I guess there's just so much post-rock on this record that they've had in the past as an influence, but now it's kind of like so at the forefront that you can almost have it as a second genre. This is the most dynamic and mature Rollo Tomassi have sounded. There are some really expansive, like 9-minute long songs that go from the crushing brutality of a mathcore band to the incredibly lush expansiveness of a post-rock band. So, you know, it's a pretty interesting record with a pretty interesting, like, dynamic. It feels a lot more mature, even in the kind of more chaotic mathcore sections, which I thought was interesting. And any record that can go from the lush soundscapes of Aftermath into the utterly savage, just riff fest that is Rituals, and make it work, definitely deserve your attention. Also, I think it's just a testament to how far they've come as a band. As always, though, tight performances all over this thing, great ideas, and well-executed, expansive pieces here. At number 13, we have Against All Logic, or AAL, 2012 to 2017. This is a house, or I guess I've seen it tagged as Deep House in a bunch of places, but honestly, I don't know much about house. Sorry, guys, don't shoot me. I really liked this record. It's a really, really, really just well put together dance record, man. It's immaculately produced. Every sound on this record is fucking gorgeous, and the arrangements come together to form like my personal dance track in my own personal heaven, right? Like, these tracks are just absolutely going to go down as classics in house music years from now. Again, I don't know a ton about the genre, to be fair, so making that statement might seem a little contentious to some people, but fuck it. Yeah, I will say that I could see this climbing higher, if it was just a little more cohesive and felt more like an album as opposed to just a bunch of really well-crafted songs. But again, I could kind of still see this one climbing regardless, because the songs are just that fucking good, really. So now I'm just going to say that after this point, we're getting into the records that basically for the whole year didn't leave rotation. These records I was just completely obsessed with. And to kick that off is Sophie's Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides at number 12. PC Music legend dash frontrunner Sophie has dropped her, I think this is her debut album. I don't know if Product counts it. I don't think it does, like a compilation of her singles. But anyway, I don't really know what the fuck to say about this record. This is incredibly unique, incredibly freakish, and just an absolute venture into the headspace of the artist Sophie. It goes from like the sweetest, lushest pop at the start with the song It's Okay to Cry, which has a beautiful message, by the way, for anyone listening to that track, to the just freaky BDSM-themed, kinky as fuck, futuristic electronic banger that is Pony Boy, which is one of the best songs of the year, for sure, as far as I'm concerned. And it executes both of these ideas and sounds so incredibly. I think my favourite thing about this record, though, is the sound of the bass hits. Like, on Pony Boy and Face Shopping, they're so overblown that they sound like they're clipping in the mic, but it kind of gives it its own really unique quality. And I almost feel like every sound on this record has something along those lines that just separates it from your average electronic producer. It almost feels like this record is bursting at the seams, which is something that I've never heard anyone do intentionally and it work this fucking well. So definitely check this record out. At number 11, we have the hip-hop legend Pusha T with Daytona. 7 tracks solid hip-hop. No one knows what to say about this one. Pusha T's been great for a very long time. Anyone who's familiar with his work in Clips is obviously aware of this. And also his previous record was solid. My Name Is My Name had a bunch of really, really great singles on it as well, although I wasn't so keen on the record overall. And this is just him reminding everyone why he's at the top of his game, why his name commands such respect in the hip-hop game. Every lyric feels incredibly purposeful and like he's crafted it very specifically for that moment in time. The beats are really fucking good, for sure. I will say that the beats and production is the one thing that I felt could have been improved on this record. Not by like a huge amount or anything, I just felt like there was just a quality to it that didn't quite mesh as well for me, or with me, as a bunch of other people. Like I said, still though, this is one of the records I've listened to the most this year, and I still adore like basically every song on here, so I've got nothing really to say other than that. It's just a really incredible hip-hop record, one of the best of the year for sure. Next up at number 10, finally breaking into that top 10 spot, is Conjurer with Maya. So this is another debut record, actually. This is a sludge metal or a post-metal record, but honestly, this is just like... This is like a love letter to every dark genre within heavy metal. And when I say dark, I mean the like really extremely dark shit, right? So this is just incredibly punishing from first listen onwards, and it kind of takes a while for the songs to really separate and you see the variety and craft across all these songs, because on first listen, the whole thing is so bleak that it'll almost come across as monotone, but I assure you this is not a particularly monotone record. This actually has a surprising amount of versatility. There's faster moments like on Wretch, where the riffs kind of kick in, it's very like chaotic and there's blast beats all over the place. The vocals are fucking fierce as well on this album. But then you'll also have the much slower sludge metal influenced things like the opening, where you've just got this one riff repeating for like 5 minutes or whatever. But it's, you know, every riff on here is really, really fucking strong. It's not boring in the slightest, and they vary up just enough as the song progresses for it to, you know, keep you on the edge of your seat. Like I said, you also have post-metal bits in here, so you have moments where everything's just sort of building up to this one climax. Everything on here is great. I don't really have any complaints about this record. That's why it's at my number 10 spot. Next up, at number 9, is Death Grips with Year of the Snitch. So, I would loosely describe this as experimental hip-hop, but really, they've kind of crafted something very unique here. This is much more fleshy and organic record than they've made before. In fact, one of the songs on here is basically just a straight-up noise rock record. Noise rock song. But, I mean, Death Grips just never failed to make something completely different out of left field and somehow make it feel so well formed that it almost sounds like this has been what they've sounded like for the longest time, you know? It still feels as kind of like fleshed out as all their other records. It definitely doesn't feel like they've picked a new sound and this is it in the fetal stage or anything. It's another great record. This is probably one of the weirder ones, one of the more experimental ones they've released, but it's got a lot of highlights for sure. I think right from the get-go it will capture attention. The song Death Grips is Online is a great song, and again, I haven't really heard them do much like it. I haven't really heard other bands do much like it. Weirdly enough, I actually think that song really kind of like filters Death Grips through almost like a Crystal Castles like synthy lens. It's really interesting. Yeah, There's just a lot of sound palettes here. If you like Death Grips already, you've probably listened to this already and you probably already love it. I know that some people have had some issues with it, and I will say that this is maybe one of Death Grips' weaker records, which is odd to say considering it's so high, but damn man, like, even one of their weaker records is going to land this high on my list because they're just such a consistent band, so I don't really know what else to say about this record. If you want something that's just freakish, all over the place stylistically, and incredibly interesting, give this a shot. You won't hear much like it. Speaking of things you won't hear much like, actually, at number 8 we have fucking JPEG Mafia. Peggy with Veteran. This is an experimental hip-hop record or glitch-hop record. Basically everyone I knew didn't enjoy this record that much on first listen, and I am kind of in that camp. I feel like I enjoyed it maybe a bit more than other people. It certainly didn't blow me away or anything. Over the year, though, this just grew and grew and grew on me. Quite frankly, in 2018, if you're not on this record, it just means you've missed the hype somehow, because holy shit, it's just strange, disorienting, and incredibly abrasive from the get-go, basically. You get a real sense of Peggy as a person on this record. You get a sense of what he values, and you're going to hear a fuck ton about the things he hates on this record. There are a lot of things he hates, for sure, but it's incredibly entertaining, pretty much from the get-go. There's so many incredible verses, so many incredible one-liners. The production is super, like, fractured and just shattered, but it all comes together in a way that just works overall. Again, it might take a little while to get into this one, I think, but it's certainly worth the kind of like effort to get into it, because it's such a rewarding listen after that time. You kind of like pick out where the grooves are, you pick out exactly what he's going for, what moments, and again, once you break through that barrier, it's such a like emotive, interesting, snarky and hilarious, just strange listen. And I mean, it's got some fucking bangers on it. You know, if you listen to like Baby I'm Bleeding and don't like it, then you probably won't enjoy this record. But if you are ever going to enjoy this record, start with like that song, or maybe the opening track. I can't remember exactly what it's called. But those two songs, if you enjoy them, then the rest of this record you'll probably enjoy over time. It won't be for everyone, but the people who get it will find a lot to love here. At number 7, we have the psychedelic hip-hop adventure that is the Kids See Ghosts record. This is a set of just incredibly colourful and creative hip-hop tracks. Kanye and Kid Cudi came together to make something really interesting and really unique here. Basically, every song here is really well defined and really great. There is no room for fat anywhere on this record, and simply put, it just contains some of the best hip-hop records you'll hear this year. Both their personalities come through in spades. Every song brings something new to the table. It's just incredibly well crafted. You could argue, I guess, it's a little bit short. This is kind of like a glorified EP to an extent, although, I mean, really, what's the difference between an EP and an album, right? Like, there's a Nails album, in fact, this Nails album, Unsilent Death, is 10 minutes, and there's EPs that are like 40 minutes, go look at Godspeed. So, you know, who really cares? Point is, this is a fucking great record, incredibly well produced. Again, every song brings something new to the table. It's a trippy, psychedelic adventure of an album. Definitely check this one out, it's one of the best of the year. At number 6, we have local boys, or at least local to me anyway, Palm Reader with the album Braille. This is a post-hardcore dash mathcore, I guess to an extent like slightly screamo record. As far as I'm concerned, Palm Reader are just straight up one of the most slept on bands in the UK underground scene, and this is their best, most expansive, interesting and colourful record. Y'all are fucking up if you haven't heard it. If you've heard of the band anyway, I can understand why other people might not have, because, I mean, they're still a relatively small band. But regardless, if you're into, I would say, like, any heavy genre, really, anything beyond, like, rock, you should probably give this a listen. It's really catchy. It's got something for your mathcore fans, your post-rock fans, your metal fans, and even your math rock fans. There's a guitar flourish in one of the songs that is basically pulled straight out of the math rock playbook in terms of tone and the way it's played. If you like guitar music, just give this a shot. There's so many incredibly well-formed ideas over this record. In fact, just the opening song, Swarm, has more ideas in it than I think a ton of bands will make over like an entire album. It goes through so many phases and it all flows beautifully with a captivating chorus. And the songs towards the end are the more expansive ones, the more like post-rocky ones. And this is kind of like the first time I've heard this band really do those justice. On the previous record, that was also very good. In fact, their whole discography is pretty great, to be honest. But on the last record, they tried those songs, And I felt like they just fell a bit flat. They were a bit one note, kind of like just chugged along on this one climax over a song, and it just wasn't all that interesting. They've learned so much and applied so many more interesting grooves into the longer, more expansive songs on this record. They've baked in these great hooks on basically every song as well, even some of the more heavy ones. So yeah, Palm Reader, Braille, one of the best of the year. Definitely go check it out. Next up, we have Denzel Curry with Taboo. This is my hip-hop album of the year. I liked Denzel before, but I didn't think he had this many incredible verses and this, like, level of personality inside of him. This is for sure his best effort. The dude's inflections and flows all over this thing are just completely nuts. And considering he's best known for writing bangers, the slower, kind of like smoother songs go down really well in my opinion. So the intro track Taboo, for example, Cash Maniac, I think it's called Black Balloon or Blackest Balloon. One of those is a banger and the other one is like a slower song. But yeah, the slower songs on this record definitely work really well. And considering it's the kind of the first time he's really tried his hand at that, I was really surprised. I will say that maybe this record is like a touch too long. There are a couple songs he could have trimmed to make this better and more kind of like impactful. But still, regardless, so many of the verses and songs of the year on this album, as far as I'm concerned. I'm pretty fucking infatuated with this record. But moving on, like I said, rock had an incredible year for me. It had an incredible year as far as I'm concerned, right? And that's reflected in my top 4. All of these are rock albums. Next up is Joy is an Act of Resistance by the band IDLES. So if I had to choose a band or an artist, or an album, I guess, that most felt like a movement this year, it would 100% be IDLES. In 2018, especially in the UK, I could not point to a more important, kind of like interesting band. Instrumentally, this album is more ambitious than the debut and more varied. On a vocal front, this record is kind of like more direct than the debut as well. I would say both of these things are trade-offs as opposed to straight improvements, because some of these experiments do go wrong. Like, some of the more ambitious bits are kind of not as well fleshed out as you might like, and the vocal directness means a lot of the snark and wit and sarcasm is left on the previous record. Again, I wouldn't say these are like downgrades or upgrades, more just like differences, right? I enjoy both records about the same, to be honest, but again, this is just a really fucking great record. If you're looking for a punk album, a post-punk album that's got a ton of intelligence in how it approaches a bunch of political topics, I'd highly recommend this album. Straight up, the songs on here, the core tunes are great as well. Like, I'm Scum and Television might be the 2 best songs of the year as far as I'm concerned. I have nothing but respect and admiration for what IDLES are doing, and I truly hope they continue to change minds and to unite people, because it certainly seems like they're doing that within the music scene. I mean, in the UK, they're kind of blowing up right now. The last shows they played in London was sold out, and in a much bigger venue than I think anyone ever really expected them to play. So, truly, hats off to IDLES. But next up, I think, is a record that I think a lot of people are going to find to be, I guess, like, somewhat of a controversial pick. I know a lot of people aren't as hype on this as I am, although I have seen people that also think this is the best release from this band. At number 3, we have Ordinary Corrupt Human Love by Deafheaven. Straight up, like I said, this is my favourite Deafheaven record. I think every second on it is utterly drop-dead beautiful. And I think this is just straight up better written than Sunbather. I would say Sunbather is the more atmospheric record, but this song... all the songs on this album contain more twists, more turns, more details, and I think, for me personally, I prefer Deafheaven when they sound like that, when they've got guitar solos popping in more frequently, when they've got more sections in each song, when the flow just feels a bit more interesting as opposed to just purely atmospheric and like, I don't want to say grating, because I wouldn't call Sunbather grating. It's a pretty gorgeous record. If you haven't heard it, I'd definitely recommend it as well. But just for me, I felt like this record was a bit more interesting. And again, I can understand that people dislike this album, because I do think that it does have a few moments that kind of just feel like they've done this in the past, kind of just feel a bit generic compared to what they used to sound like. This is less, like, unique, I guess, than Sunbather. But again, I think this is far too triumphant, far too grandiose to at least not warrant credit for those qualities. And I mean, I fucking adore this record. This is my 3rd favourite of the year. It's my favourite Deafheaven record. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this has been a somewhat slept-on record this year. But not quite as slept on as my number 2, which is The Armed, Only Love. So they're a mathcore band. That's kind of like, again, a very loose definition, though. I would say they used to be more of a mathcore band. Nowadays, on this record especially, they're more of just an experimental rock band, I suppose. I've also put, like, noise rock, because I would say that's the main genre, but not from, like, a songwriting perspective. It's more from, like, an aesthetic perspective. Put it this way. I didn't think this record would be top this year. I thought this would be number one for sure. On this record, they have pulled together, as far as I'm concerned, one of the most innovative, probably actually the most innovative thing in mathcore since the genre's inception. If you have ever wanted to hear Modest Mouse hooks, Melt Banana just vocal freakouts, Dillinger-esque chaos, and Death Heaven walls of lush guitars on one record, then this is a record for you. While this record is insanely catchy, varied, off the wall, and detailed, it's also like super dense. So those qualities and that variation may not come through on first listen. You're definitely gonna have to give this one like a little while. In fact, I would almost describe, to me, this record kind of reads as like they're a band that have gone into the studio with a ton of really dense ideas and then said, you know what? This needs to be more dense. Let's just water damage all of the gear and then play it on that water damaged gear. There's so much like crackling and clipping almost in the kind of mixes here that it's really, really hard to pull apart. But once you get past that barrier of just the sheer, like, apparent wall of noise, you'll find some of the catchiest tunes you'll hear all year. And again, it's one of the most varied records you'll hear all year. Like, the second song on it is just so bizarrely quiet for a band like The Armed to pull together. And it's a testament to their songwriting capability. It's a testament to their artistic vision and ability to kind of like capture that vision so perfectly on a record. I don't know. I'm just infatuated with this thing, man. I don't really know what else to say about it. This is a record you have to slowly tease apart, but it was just an insanely rewarding experience to me. I guess you could say it's needlessly obtuse, but again, for me, that just kind of adds to the record. I didn't personally find it to be so standoffish that it wasn't worth the effort to get through that. Also, again, I think this is so varied that it is worth it. It's not like it's just incredibly noisy and once you break through it, you find like the same trick on every song. Every song here is super defined and super different. And again, I would say that this is like quite an atmospheric record, or at least it comes across like that because of the way that everything is brought together due to this like aesthetic they're going for with the insanely dense walls of noise. So yeah, again, I was convinced this was going to be my number one. And it was my number one until an absolute monster of a record topped it, and that is the New Daughters album, You Won't Get What You Want. Right. So, something for me that those of you that don't, well, the most of you won't know, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm a total nerd for scores, straight up. I really, really like kind of like categorizing albums at a certain number, because it gives me a nice way of just seeing what I preferred on any given listen or at any point in time, right? Something else. I'm not like super rigid with it. Like I'm never going to give a record a 7.6 or something super specific. I'll give it like, I don't know, it'll be out of 10 and then I'll also use the 0.5s, right? But in general, I really, really hate labeling things 10 out of 10 because I think the concept of a perfect piece of art is such an such an unlikely and abstract thing that for me it's really hard to quantify. I can't really imagine what a 10 out of 10 anything would look, sound, or feel like, right? And as a result, there's only a couple records. In fact, there's only 3 records that I would give a 10 out of 10 to prior to this album. This is a 10 out of 10 to me. This is my 4th 10 out of 10, and it's the best album I've heard in 7 years. As far as I'm concerned, this record is completely flawless. It's such an interesting, just anxious death spiral of an album. Sonically, it's so incredibly dark and off-kilter in a way that you kind of have to hear it to really believe it. It's really hard to describe. I can't even really describe how the guitars sound on this thing. They're like very jangly and almost like a post-punky or like Swansea kind of way, but they're used for such a like different effect that I don't really have words to describe it. Every song on this record as well brings something new to the table, much like the Armed record. There is nothing on here that is like loose weight. There is no fat to cut. This is such a trimmed down, perfect record as far as I'm concerned. Another thing that I've not really seen too many people speak about is that I think one of the most pivotal things to this record is how cohesive the whole thing is and how it comes together. Like I said, the sounds are incredibly dark and odd and strange, and I would, like I said, borderline anxiety-inducing, honestly. But the other half of that is the lyrics, right? And I haven't really heard that many people talk about how great the lyrics are on this record, which I think is super interesting, because I think they're a perfect reflection of almost a surreal description of these kind of like very grounded and normal feelings and kind of situations. You have a song where a dude basically just freaks out and starts running away from his home, away from his life, like in a metaphorical way, I guess, but it's described in a very grounded and realistic way. There's another song in which I think Satan in the Way is what it's called, and the opening is just this description of something you can envision perfectly, but it's such a like freakish description that it almost feels surreal, you know? That's kind of the feeling I get from basically all of the lyrics on this record. And again, I feel like that just makes it feel so cohesive. But one thing I will say is that I've seen a few people describe this album as like hateful or aggressive, and I gotta say that I find that really bizarre, because to me, this is a far more frightened and anxious record than anything else. Like, I would say that anything that could be read as description on this record is more akin to, like, a cornered animal just lashing out at everything around it through, like, pure fear and self-preservation, as opposed to any form of, like, malicious predator or, like, calculated hitman or anything like that. But just to bring it back real quick, at the end of the day, like, this record is also just a very well-written album. Like, the songs on here flow perfectly. There's nothing I dislike. Everything reinforces the central themes and core points and concepts. I'm blown away, honestly. I almost can't believe this record exists, to be completely honest with you. I can't wait to see Daughters live. I was lucky enough to catch them last year, actually, far before this record. But regardless, with the new material, I think the live show is going to be much improved, honestly. I'm very excited. I think basically everyone should check out this record. I think it's going to be really important moving forwards. And although it's not the most innovative thing in the world that you'll ever hear, like, there are noise rock bands that sound kind of like this, but I just think this is executed to such a brilliant degree that you kind of can't fuck with it. So there you go. There's my number one, and there's my albums of the year list. I hope you've all enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed this video, then please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and I hope to see you around in another video. Happy New Year, everyone, I guess.